Okay, so I'm here with Brandon Dennis, also referred to as Oxhorn.
That's me.
You're an influencer, streamer, and if I looked you up, it lists you as a musician.
Does
So
it
that's like
really?
your yeah. If I Google you and do your official thing, yeah, it lists you as a musician. So
Huh,
musician and composer. So
I'll take it.
um, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, totally good. I've known you for a long time. Probably, I think I met you back in like 2008, um, when you were sort of like really killing the YouTube thing back in those days. And I think it's really interesting because I think you were kind of one of the first ones. Like there was, I mean, it's really kind of in the early days of YouTube, and you were definitely
it
like one of like the early interesting influencers.
it was the Wild West. It was certainly the early days of YouTube. I remember at the time there was actually a lot of talk about alternate platforms to use than YouTube. In fact, because YouTube at the time was really poor quality. And if you try to watch
Interesting.
videos that were uploaded at around that time, old videos, they're all going to be really grainy, and that's not because the source material that was uploaded was poor. It's because the original YouTube was never designed for HD videos or anything like
Oh,
that.
interesting.
It took Google buying them and improving the website over years that it finally became good. So when I was doing my machinima, my World of Warcraft machinima, everyone was using Stage 6 and channels that or websites that were dedicated just to World of Warcraft videos. And everyone's like, "Oh, YouTube, don't use YouTube. They're really poor quality." But I was like, "Well, I want things everywhere." So I put all my stuff on the fancy websites, but then I also put it all on YouTube. And on YouTube, it all took off.
So it's interesting because I like you had a really big following back in those days. I mean, you still do, but like in those early days, you were. And so, what kind of following did you have on the other websites, like on the other video streaming services?
Well, back then, when I was doing the World of Warcraft videos, there was a website called warcraftmovies.com.
Oh,
And that
interesting.
that was the one that everyone went to watch Warcraft movies. And it's the one that I wanted to focus all of my time and attention on. It was really over engineered because for every single video landing page, you could upload a JPEG background for the video page. You could put a customized CSS and HTML in the description of the video. Like there was a ton of production that went into each video's page. With YouTube now, it's just this refined process and you upload it and then you move on to the next video. But the way many of these websites worked is every upload was this, event, this piece of art that you were publishing, and they demanded that you put all of this time and attention into it. So my focus at the time was to make all of my videos on warcraftmovies.com look really good with images and banners and CSS and all of this. And yeah, then I'll upload it to YouTube too, just to have it everywhere.
So I want to back up, because I think a lot of people don't know the whole story, and I actually don't know like the whole story in detail. I know I've talked to you about this over the years, but like where were you when you started this stuff? What caused you to start doing it? And then like you could kind of tell me the story of like what happened, like how that took off, and how that exploded for you.
Well, it was college. I was in the middle of working on my degree, and World
What
of
were you going to
Warcraft.
college for?
I was getting a history degree. Well, I started by getting a Scandinavian studies degree.
Oh,
That
interesting. I never
eventually,
knew that.
yeah,
Interesting.
the entire purpose, my thought process going into college was, I wanted to read Old Icelandic. I wanted to read the original Norse Eddas and sagas. So I get into college and I sign up for Scandinavian studies. The university I was at had a great Scandinavian studies program, and I spend years learning Swedish, only to realize that I didn't like languages. I didn't like learning Swedish.
Is that like a background? Did you have some sort of reason why Swedish was
Well,
it just the literature or
it was a requirement before they allowed you to learn Old Icelandic, you had to have a background in another Scandinavian language. So I could pick between, Norwegian or Finnish or Swedish, and I chose Swedish, even though, Iceland. I'm not exactly sure how connected Icelandic is with Swedish, but they wanted a Scandinavian language as a background, as a precursor to being able to read old Icelandic. So that's why I did that, only to discover that I didn't like it. So I changed my major from Scandinavian studies to history because I had taken a number of history courses that I really enjoyed. And so I'm pursuing my history degree, and I wanted to focus on the classics, only to discover that in order to get my history degree, I had to learn more languages. So I sat there learning Latin and Greek for about 2 or 3 years, and I did not like it, hated every moment of it. But I managed to pass those classes somehow. Don't ask me to speak any Latin or Greek. I'm not.
Yeah, that was going to be my next thing for you, was to ask you if you could.
No, none of it stuck. Not. I learned just enough Swedish to remember how to flirt with Swedish women, and that's all that I remember. That's all that stuck with me. But then
probably useful by itself.
Well, that was the goal. I had a roommate at the time who was also knew Swedish. He was another history major, and he had actually mastered Swedish, so he was really good at it. I was learning it, and he would try and help me every now and then. But we bonded over trying to find Swedish-speaking beautiful women on campus who we could flirt with, and it was a disaster. It did not work. You would think it would work. It did not work.
So you're going to college for history, and this has got to be around what year?
2004, 2005,
okay, so this is
something like that.
Like just as YouTube's becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And I remember these days too, because there was in that day a lot of different video streaming services. I was just having a conversation with somebody recently about that, saying that, like it's weird to think, but it was like YouTube was just one of like many different video streaming services.
It was. Then. I mean, Google had their own. They didn't want to have to buy YouTube. They wanted everyone to use the Google Video. So yeah. I had all my videos on Google Video as well, which it was actually better quality. I liked Google Video better than YouTube at the time, but it didn't work. They ended up having to buy it.
So this is also the peak years of World of Warcraft. So I'm imagining you're going to college, you're probably playing World of Warcraft, you're flirting with Swedish girls. So where's the next step there? Like this is actually, yeah. So where's the next part of that story?
Well, I was a big Dark Age of Camelot player when I was going to community college, and then World of Warcraft came out, and everyone who was playing any other MMO, whether it was Dark Age of Camelot or Asheron's Call or EverQuest or whatever, they all switched to World of Warcraft because at the time, World of Warcraft was just innovative in ways that no other MMO was. Mm-hmm. So everyone started playing this game, and I started playing this game, and I wasn't really big on the lore of the universe or anything like that, but I enjoyed the social aspect of it, having a guild and having a community. And I was in college, and I was also in a number of choirs, and I was in choir in college for many, many years. And so I was practicing my singing and having a good time with that. And I figured, well, what if I started making silly songs for YouTube?
So I want to touch on that for a little bit. Like,
sure.
So was that just something you started in college, or did you start that? Like, was your love for music before that?
Well, I was always around music growing up. My dad was a trumpet player. The trumpet was a big part of the Dennis family history. My dad was a trumpet player. His dad was a trumpet player. I'm sure his dad was also a trumpet player.
Are you a trumpet player?
I was a trumpet player. I was raised to be a trumpet player.
Okay.
I gave my son a choice. He chose trombone. So
is that disappointing to you?
No, I'm fine with it. I'm like, you know what? I've been around the trumpet my entire life. Trombone?
Interesting.
Have at it.
I've never heard you play the trumpet.
There are reasons for this.
Oh, okay.
Not that I hate it. I don't hate it. I had a great time with the trumpet. I actually got pretty good at it. But yeah. So my entire youth was spent playing the trumpet, and then when I went to college, I stopped playing the trumpet because I was like, no, I'm not paying
I'm done
to
with this.
play
Yeah.
the trumpet. No.
Yeah.
So, but I also wanted to be involved in music, and so I joined a number of choirs just to continue being around music. And I ended up really enjoying all of the choirs and ensembles that I was part of. And I enjoyed a lot of the music that the professors would choose. And so one of my very first videos was taking one of the songs we were singing in choir and meshing it with World of Warcraft. It was a Latin hymn called Verbum Caro Factum Est, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this beautiful medieval sounding song. And in World of Warcraft, there's this faction called the Forsaken, and they're these undead creatures. I'm probably getting this wrong. It's been so long since I've played World of Warcraft, but
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, they were called the Forsaken. There were these undead creatures, and they had this really sort of gothic background, which I found a little interesting. And so I thought it was haunting, the song that we were singing in choir, and I thought the art style of these Forsaken undead creatures were really cool, and I decided to mesh them together in this little music video that kind of tried to tell the story of these undead Forsaken creatures but set to music.
So this is really interesting. Were other people doing machinima at the time? Was that something you were interested in, as a consumer?
No, I mean, yes, there were lots of other people were doing machinima at the time. Machinima was a huge thing, and it was seen as the next art style, the next big sort of consumer art style. But personally, on a personal level, I didn't watch any of it. I didn't get into it for that reason. I got into it just because I needed an outlet for my own creativity and my own storytelling. But it was this huge thing. Like I remember when my channel started getting big, everyone in the machinima quote unquote industry started to try and connect to me to try and get me to hawk their goods or promote their whatever. I had somebody who wrote The Idiot's Guide to Machinima and sent me that book he wanted me to review. There was this big convention in New York that I was invited to. It was the Machinima Academy of Arts and Sciences or something like that. And they started giving out awards. I won an award for one of my songs. Or no, I was nominated for one of my songs, one of my videos at the time. I didn't actually win, and I was really bitter about that.
So you were doing these. So you started off making this video, and I want to know, like, sort of what was the up ramp from that point? Like, you made the video. Where did it go? Like, what happened? How was it received?
I didn't care at the time. I was just making videos. I would publish the video and watch it, and I'd be like, "Oh, I like this video. I made this for me. This is nice."
But where were you publishing them?
Everywhere.
You're publishing them on YouTube. Okay, on all of them. And what kind of pickup were you getting? You didn't care. You don't even remember. You don't notice, or like what kind of pickup were you getting?
I didn't notice until I made a video. I'm trying to remember which one is the one where I actually started paying attention to it. It was either Red Snappa or Rafflemau. But one of these videos that I did went, as we would say today, viral in the World of Warcraft community. And it got millions of views. And I'm sitting there going, whoa, okay.
So how many videos had you done up to that point?
Like 4 or 5. It wasn't a lot. I think I had made Inventing Swear Words 1, which was just a silly little skit that I did between some friends of mine. Oh, and contests were big. I mean, one of the reasons that I was doing these videos as well is that all of these online gaming websites were holding machinima contests, and they would have great prizes. And I thought that would be fun. And I had taught myself video editing, and I enjoyed telling stories. So I figured, well, I'll join some of these contests. So many of the videos that I had made were submissions to these contests. Xfire had one. Xfire had a bunch. There were a bunch of other companies that had them as well. So most of my earlier videos were in response to these contests. Even Blizzard themselves were having machinima contests, and they were giving out awards at BlizzCon. And I submitted
Did you
a
win
number
any
of
of the
my.
Did you win any
Um,
of the contests?
I didn't. I remember there was this one video that I made that I was super proud of, and I made it in the style of an old black and white silent film. It was called Racing the Grim Totem, and it was my first serious video because everything else I had done was comedy or a music video, but this was like a tragic Shakespearean tale of a lady who was killed by thugs and a revenging husband and all of that. But I had used copyrighted music in it. And so I submitted it to Blizzard's contest and it didn't win, but I was actually smoking cigars and drinking with some of the developers afterwards after the contest results, and they were like, "Yeah, we loved it. The only reason we couldn't, nominate it further
Mm.
was because you used copyrighted music, and that was against the terms. So that was my fault. I just didn't pay attention to the rules when I submitted that one. But yeah, I
There's
don't think I
this like
really won any contest back in the day.
there's this like rule of tens with content production that you've probably heard of before. I know like Tom Scott does a video about this where basically, and I've experienced this myself, where it's like if you start making content, like 1 out of 10 things will really take off, but you won't be able to predict which one it is. And it sounds like you kind of like experienced that rule with your early videos.
Yeah, in my case, it's 1 out of 50. But yeah, I hear what he's saying.
Was it that many though? Was it that many in the early days? I mean, were you making that like videos on that level? Because you said that you had made like you're talking about 5 or 6 of them here,
Yeah,
and I remember them. They're really really great. Like they were all really great.
they were so much fun to make, and that in those early days before I really realized that this could be something I could do, I only had 4 or so. So Rafflemal was really my first big hit, and then Red Snappa did pretty well as well. The Inventing Swear Word City series did pretty good, and then I made a bunch of other stuff. I did Orcs in Space, and I did Associate Professor Evil Kills All. Insert annoying thing here. I had Hat the Singing Turtle. I tried a lot of different stuff, but Rafflemal was really my only big hit.
So how
Um,
many videos had you done up to the point where you had done Raffle Mal? Like how many of them were sitting on YouTube at that point?
like
That
4. It was really one of my first.
okay, so the rule of tens really does apply in this
I
sense because
suppose
you
so, but
yeah, I mean because it's like you're in that ballpark of like so when you got when Raffle Mal really took off, uh, did the other ones take off as well then? Did like the previous videos that you had done before, did they sort of take off as well?
yeah, it's harder to measure. Uh, so I mean, they got a lot of really good views, but YouTube didn't have any analytics. So at the
Oh,
time,
interesting.
so I couldn't actually see where my referral traffic was coming from or how they were being um, recommended, if in fact they were being recommended at all. I think a lot of the early success that my channel had in particular was just word of mouth. Like it was a World of Warcraft funny video that I made, and so people in the World of Warcraft community were talking about it and sharing the video. And honestly, I had way more views on warcraftmovies.com than I did on YouTube for
Interesting.
a long time. That's where I thought I was finding success. And it wasn't until a long time after I published Raffle Mount to YouTube that I went back to check on it, and it had crossed the million view barrier. And I'm like, whoa, when did that happen? And then I began to realize, okay, maybe I should start putting more thought and time into all of this.
So okay, so you have Raffle Mal takes off, and then you sort of realize you have something there. Like where do you go from there? Like what are the next things that you do after that?
Well, I graduated college, and I found myself in a position where I had graduated and I now needed to find employment. And I didn't graduate with a degree in video editing or creative writing or storytelling or anything like that. I got a degree in history. And the famous joke that everyone said is that when you get a degree in history, you can only get a job if one of two things happen. If somebody in the history department retires or dies. There are no new history jobs being made, right? There are no
Wow.
few universities are being built, few history departments are being created. where are you going to use your history degree? I mean, maybe you could teach it in an elementary school or something, but yes, aside from that. So I didn't put a lot of thought into the degree that I got. I chose the degree because I enjoyed the topic and the subject matter. I should have chosen a degree that would have prepared me to support myself financially afterwards. So I found myself with this history degree and no job prospects. But then, thankfully, I got a job at Amazon working as an editor for the DVD team, and I was editing spreadsheets day in day out, and I was still doing the
Not a video editor though.
not a video
You're,
editor, no, it was
uh,
spreadsheet editing. I was working for the DVD team, and we were just organizing DVD inventory for Amazon at the time.
so were you still at that time? Were you still moonlighting doing the
I
machinima?
was, yeah. I it was so close to my graduation that I was still making videos when I got home, and I moved into a studio apartment, and I continued to do my video editing, and there was this real energy in the machinima community at the time that I haven't really ever experienced since, where everyone was excited by machinima and
Hmm.
they thought that it had a lot of potential, and everyone was really supportive of each other, and we were sharing all of our movies, and we had this great little community, and I wanted to continue to be part of that. And so I did that until I got this. Someone reached out to me while I was working at Amazon, and they said, "Hey, Oxhorn, I love all your videos. Um, if you fly to San Francisco, we'll give you a job and pay you like 3 times what you're making now to make movies for us." And I'm like,
Who's that?
"We Game." It was a
Oh,
company
okay.
called We Game, and they were developing uh, a software that could hook into the video game that you're playing, allowing you to either record video game footage to your hard drive or allow you to broadcast it elsewhere, or publish it to their website. That was the whole
Yeah, I
spiel.
mean it sounds passe nowadays, but I
Yeah.
remember back in those days that was a big deal. Like that was a, I mean this is
And
like pre Twitch, pre everything. You know, like that's like that was a big deal back then.
looking back on it, it's so funny because one of the big things that we were trying to do is we thought that having the software installed on your computer that allowed you to hook into a game and easily publish your footage to our website, WeGame, we thought that would make our website the destination for video game content, and we would
Hmm.
be a rival to YouTube. We were young, like the founder of the company was 19 years old, okay?
Oh wow.
I was older than him when I went to go work for him. And we all loved games, and he thought that he could take on YouTube, and we tried. All right. This was 2007, 2008. I fly down to San Francisco. Man, we tried hard. It was just like I've never been in a work culture like that since. Sometimes we slept in the office. Sometimes like we ate, drank, and just we bled that company. And no one forced us to.
Yeah.
Like we did it because we had so much fun working there. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. But then, of course, the housing crisis of 2008 happens, all of his investors pull out, and suddenly we're stuck in downtown San Francisco with this office that's like $200,000 a month in rent, with a startup company that's starting to take off. You know, it's starting to look good, but absolutely no fuel left in the fire.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people I realize because I've gone through this, get to experience like the startup grind and sort of the excitement that comes with doing that. It's kind of it's like a it's its own magical experience, but it's also like incredibly taxing. Like you know this
It
idea
is.
about being really excited about what you're doing and sleeping in the office and you know doing it 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. You
Yeah.
know with this hope. But that's but it's cool. It's cool to get to experience that. So the housing market collapses, and We Game doesn't make it. So where do
Yeah.
you go? Where do you go from there?
Well, I had to, it was a really awful time for me because it was the collapse of all my dreams at the time, right? Because I really went full into this whole machinima thing because I was making the videos that I was doing as a hobby. I was making them professionally full time for a company that was paying me money to do it. It was like the best thing I could think of. And we
So
had
that's I was going to ask you is what you were doing for them. You were making machinima videos for them. Like, what was your role at the company? And
Well, my official title was creative director.
yeah,
But when they hired me, they just gave me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. So I just kept doing what I had always been doing. I went,
yeah.
I went and made Inventing Swear Words 4. And then I went and made the next Associate Professor Evil video, the next Orcs in Space. I continued with the series that I had established beforehand. I'm looking back on it now with the experience that I have on YouTube now. The strategy that I employed for Wii Game wasn't the best strategy because I was looking at my videos as like art. And
Hmm.
on one hand, that's a good thing because you want to have pride in what you're doing. On the other hand, it would take me like a month to make a video. And I was using Adobe After Effects and I was having all of these layers and I was learning how to do special effects. Like I was really making these
Hmm.
really amazing videos. And they would do okay.
Yeah,
They wouldn't
yeah.
go viral. I wasn't getting my next raffle amount, and it didn't.
This is something that I talk to a lot of people because I've experienced this with video games. Is this balance between doing your art and then doing something that's like commercially
Yeah,
viable, and they're not always the same thing. I mean, ideally, in the best case, they are, but there's this difficult balance that you have to strike between doing the thing that you love, the artistic expression, and like doing the thing that you know is going to work.
yeah. If I could go back and do that again, I probably would have focused on shorter, punchier, funnier content instead of creating this elaborate, weird comedy music mythology that I
Interesting.
was trying to make at the time. But my boss didn't complain. He just me liked me doing whatever I was doing, and it was
Yeah,
still
that's why you
bringing
were
in
there.
the views. So it ended up being okay. But it was an awful time because I wanted to keep doing that, and I loved doing that, but I could no longer do that. So I tried trying to find something in the San Francisco area. I remember I drove all the way to Pixar and
Hmm.
I got to their front gate, which was closed, and I took a picture of myself outside of Pixar. And then while I'm standing there, I pulled up my phone and I called Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles, and I got his secretary, and she's like, "Hello, this is Brad Bird's office. Who's calling?" I'm like, "Yeah, my name is Brandon. I'd like a job, please." And she laughed. She starts cackling and she goes, "Oh, sure, Brandon, come right in. We'll give you a job." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And then she had to stop herself. "No, no, 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 no. I'm joking. You cannot have a job. I'm joking." And then she hung up on me.
Wow, wow.
But that's the kind of thing I was doing. I went to EA headquarters. I went to Pixar headquarters. I was going everywhere trying to find a job, and I didn't get any luck because it was the middle of the house. Like there were no jobs. There were none. I
Yeah,
remember
I remember those days.
I drove all the way back to Seattle, to the Seattle area where I'm at now, and I remember going to a friend's barbecue, and the topic of conversation when we got back was jobs. Everyone was talking about where you could get a job, and there were rumors. So like, "Oh, did you hear about the mill on the hill? The mill on the hill might have a job." And people were like, "Really? Do
Oh,
they
like
really
any
have a job?"
jobs. Yeah, any
No,
jobs at all. I don't think a
seriously,
lot of people remember how it's long enough now for I don't think people remember how
yeah,
bad it was back then and how difficult it was. And it's really, now we're kind of going through like a similar thing. Like when you
mm,
talk to people in the tech industry, I've not seen layoffs like this in, my entire career, working in the tech industry. And it's like now you're, seeing everybody in places that you wouldn't have imagined this happening.
yeah,
But back then it was rough. Like everybody was out of work,
yeah.
and the world was changing rapidly.
It was.
So you're back in Seattle. Everybody's looking for a job. Um, and so what's the next? And your videos aren't doing great. So this isn't a good time for you, right? Like your videos, the things that you love doing, like it's not working as well for you as it
Well,
had been.
the videos. Yeah, the videos are doing okay, but I I was running out of time. I was continuing to work on some videos, and I was still publishing. So on my old YouTube channel, now that I was free from my contract with WeGame, I could continue to publish to YouTube, and so I was trying to get some content out there. And I published two or three things during that time that didn't do nearly as well as my original content. But it was around that time that I was kind of moving away from YouTube, and I was trying to focus on my marketing career. And I got an apartment, and I started looking for jobs every single day. That's what I did. I sent out resumes. I probably applied to 15 to 20 jobs every day for months, and
Oh wow.
there was nothing.
And those
Just
were primarily like marketing jobs?
it was anything. It was anything I could get. This was before Indeed.com or anything like that. So I was on Craigslist. I was just browsing LinkedIn and trying to find just any sort of website that would have a job. I was focusing on, like, I would love to do what I was doing at WeGame, like a creative director in a gaming company or something like that, but I couldn't find anything like that. So I was willing to take anything. I was applying to any sort of marketing position, a writing position, directing, editing. I was I was tailoring each resume for the job that I was trying to apply to, and I was just applying, and that went for months and months and months until I got the job where I met you at
Oh, that's interesting. So that was the
Yazy.
point where you started working for me at Yazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brandon worked for me
I did.
in these early days, and I guess for more selfish reasons, I'm kind of interested to hear that story from your point of view.
All right. Well, I find this it's listing on Craigslist. And it's a company that had this hit children's game, and I forget the name of it.
You're being too kind, and you totally don't have to do that.
It was a hit children's game.
Yeah, hit children's game. That's like an overstatement. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, come on.
But yeah, we were a small little startup making a children's game. Yeah, that was wasn't received very well. So let's just like set the record straight.
Okay, so we'll set that straight.
Yeah.
I still have it here in my Steam list. It says I've only played 34 minutes of it. Really? I thought I played way more than that. Only 34 minutes? No.
I have a box somewhere. I have one in a box somewhere. Like, we had made this children's game that ended up like literally on the shelves of Target, which is a crazy story in and of itself, because it's like, for the idea of like making this small company of like 5 or 6 people that ended up putting a box product on the shelf of Target was kind of crazy in and of itself.
I mean, the art looks good. I'm going through the screenshots now. It's pretty good. It's not bad.
So you find this small indie company with their
small indie company
breakaway children's title, and
they were wanting to pivot towards making games for Facebook, and they needed somebody to come and help with community management. And so I answered the call, and the boss is really cool, and they say yes, and I finally get a job after like 5 months of looking for work every single day. I finally get a job, and it's like a 40 to 45 minute commute from my house.
Oh wow, I never knew that.
I was in Kent at the time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a long commute.
We always felt really fortunate to have you around. We just felt like you were a celebrity, and you brought so much value to that company. It's funny to hear from your point of view that you were kind of like in a bad place and looking for work, because we just felt like you were a like amazing find, we, out of anybody we could have had in that job, like it was like, we're privileged to have, sort of like this YouTube celebrity that, and I still talk about you a lot to people, which is funny, because I always talk about like, oh, I got this friend who's a YouTube celebrity, and, it's over the years, he's helped me out in like so many different ways, but yeah, we were like kind of when we met you, we were definitely like starstruck. We were like, oh, this is more. We're getting a lot more than we had bargained for in this position.
Well, I was really grateful, because it it's the closest I had gotten back to that original feeling I got working at We Game,
Hmm.
where you had this small crew and you were all
Yeah.
passionate about a project and you worked really closely together and you had lunches together and you talked about it. Like I finally felt like I was getting some of that back. And when we were working on the game, that's what we did. I still talk, to my family about how excited you were about going to Costco and getting those hot dogs, those really cheap
Yeah. Yeah.
Costco hot dogs. We would go there for lunch and just, man, all you could do is talk about how cheap those hot dogs were. And they're just so
Yeah.
cheap and great.
It's funny when you run a startup. I don't know how much context you have about this because so we started a startup, um, and it was like, we had very little money to start the startup with, but we started it with a basically like a Microsoft millionaire was our benefactor, and I think somebody told her at one point that being cheap was like an attribute that venture capitalists liked. And we all took this to like an extreme while we were there. So we had like furniture out of the garbage, and yeah, I remember getting in fights about printer ink. Like I don't know if you were around for that, where like we would print something up and put it on the walls, and then later on, she'd come in and get upset with us for using printer ink because it was expensive. But the Costco trips I remember because everybody would be like, it was kind of in the same position. It's like, where can we get lunch for, you get lunch cheap, and I'd be like, okay,
we're going to Costco.
well, yeah, let's go to Costco. And I remember nobody ever having cash on them. And I remember driving there telling people like, hey, if you can pull enough change out of my dashboard,
we can
get a hot dog and a drink, then it's all yours, right?
$1.25.
Yeah. So I still tell people stories about like all of us sitting in Costco eating hot dogs and fighting with the crows.
That's
the crows fighting for our hot dogs.
Yeah.
Out in the outdoor, because we would go to the Costco here that had the outdoor food court. And fight with the crows over our food. Yeah, they were good days. I remember those days. They were great. The other thing was always funny. There was the drama in the office, because we had just like diametrically.
We had personalities.
Yeah, definitely. And they were all in different extremes of who they were. So it was like almost like, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but when we started that startup, I wanted to do like a reality show about it in the beginning.
Did you?
And yeah. And as we were starting it, I thought this would be a cool reality show about going off and starting the company. So the story is like, I was at Microsoft working in Microsoft research with some learning technology that for kids. And I left the company with a general manager there to start this startup. And the other person that was involved in it was my friend Duncan, singular name. Interesting. I would credit him,
got
but
all the characters. We've got the man with no name, the man with one name. We've got the angry artist with the short fuse.
Yeah. Which one? Because there was two. They were angry in different ways. There was two of them that were angry in different ways. Like one of them was just sort of like grumpy angry, and the other one was sort of like had a deeper anger to him. That was people always think artists are these fun-loving people, but the really tortured souls. Yeah, they were two angry artists. Yeah, I remember that.
And the man with one name.
The man with one name. Yeah, Duncan had a history. Like Duncan was the original designer of Half-Life, and me and him were together at Microsoft, and we talked about starting this company. And there was a lot of really interesting stories that came out of that. But one of the things that we were talking about doing in the beginning was like, hey, let's make a reality show about starting a small company. And as we kept doing stuff, we kept thinking like, oh, all the interesting stuff is over with. Like this wouldn't be a good show. And then stuff kept happening, and I kept thinking like, man, we should have made a show. Because if I ever wrote like a TV show like that, the characters in that company would have just been a hilarious thing, like day by
Yeah.
day. Just the discussions and the arguments that we had on a day by day basis were just like totally
It could have
hilarious.
been
Because
like an
like if
episode of The Office on
yeah,
YouTube.
like if you were writing like a Breakfast Club kind of thing, like it would have been the perv. I think how many there was like five of us in the office every day,
Yeah.
six, five, six, like, and they were completely opposite ends of the spectrum in every way. And I always have these. I always tell people these funny stories about those days. Um,
For good days.
I don't know if you. I don't know. Like there was there. I'm trying to think. There was Bill, who was the. Do you remember Bill, the angry artist? Like there was Sean. I think was I
Sean.
think Sean is probably who you
I don't
remember.
remember
Like
Bill.
'cause
I
Bill
remember
was
Sean.
the concept artist that
Okay.
had all the political stickers on his light box and his.
I don't think I ever met Bill.
things. Oh, you weren't there at the same time as Bill. That's
No, I think I
interesting.
was after
And then and then I had the programmers back in the office with me. Sean Stringer, we just lost him. Like I don't know if I
No.
like he died back in April. Yeah,
Oh
he
my God.
he ended up with um, cancer.
Oh my
And I was
God.
fortunate enough. I started hanging out with him right before that, and he was so fond of those days too. Like I didn't really realize the impact that it had on those people. Like it was his first job out of college, and he was trying to break into the game industry, and it was a super positive experience. I always worried that it was a negative experience for people because like being in startups is unpleasant a lot of times.
Yeah.
Like there's this ability to do things that you normally wouldn't have been allowed to do at another job. But it's also a lot of work. But I think most of those people had positive experiences. It sounds like you did.
I did. It's anytime that you get in an environment where you look forward to going to work every day because you're working with genuinely good people. You're in a good environment. You're making core memories, and you're gonna look back on that time with fondness. But I didn't know about Sean. That's sad. That's really sad.
Yeah. I think a lot of people. I think that I found out in through like a Google search or something like that.
Oh,
So like
man.
I had been hanging out with him, and he kind of dropped off the radar. But anyways, you were so you come to this scrappy little startup, and you're getting to do your videos
Yeah.
again, which is great to hear that was how you
Well,
remember that.
I a little bit. I think I made. I was getting pretty good at After Effects, and so I did a little animated video for the company. It was called Yay Z, and I got to do branding, which was my first time, and I got to make the little icon for it. It was an orange Y and a blue Z, and I put them together, and it was Yay Z. It was my first brand and my logo. I was feeling like a graphic designer. It was just amazing. And I got to do community management primarily. And the cool thing was that I was using my social media to promote the company, and so a lot of the Oxhorn fans were coming to the Facebook
Yeah.
page, and they were engaging with the community. And I was running contests. We were doing fan art contests, and then we released the game, and people were playing it, and we were having a great time talking about it. I think one of the most fulfilling things for me was branching out of community management and actually doing copywriting for the game. I enjoyed writing the little descriptions for all of the pieces of weaponry and armor that we were selling for the game that we were making.
You did it well. I remember that. Like
I had a lot
it
of fun
was
with
like
that.
it exceeded my expectations for that. Yeah.
But any time I get an opportunity to just be creative, even if it's just silly, it's always a lot of fun. So I was having a good time, but it was still the tail end of the financial crisis, and there were money funding issues, and so that sadly fell apart as well.
Yeah. It was sad when the company closed. Everybody was really working hard to keep that little place afloat, and it's just kind of the story of startups, that you do your best, and things come out, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. I don't really know what you did after that. Like I think I lost track of everybody.
So by this time, I've got experience with startups. I had been in 2 failed startups. I was a failed startup pro. So what did I do? I went and joined another startup, and this time,
Right. 3 times the charm.
three
Yeah.
times the charm. They hired me as an actual video editor. So I was doing actual video editing. That was my job. I was initially hired just to make a bunch of explanatory videos that explained the ins and out of hospitality software. So not I'm no longer in the gaming industry. I am officially in the corporate world, but I'm working for a startup. It was a small team, great people. I got to do video editing, and I was having fun. And there was this guy, an old, a Microsoft millionaire, made a piece of hotel management software, and he called it Boutique. Let me spell it for you: Buuteeq.
Okay.
Boutique. That was the name of the company. And he made the initial. It was a CMS, a content management system, where hoteliers could plug in all of the information about their hotel, pick a theme, push a button, and boom, it would publish a website. And there was stuff like that already at the time, like Squarespace, I think was there at the time. But the unique sell of this particular company was that this software was designed just for hoteliers, which means we knew hotel SEO, we knew how to promote your hotel the way that no other company could. And so I was initially hired to make videos for this company, but then, I started doing social media writing, and then I started honing my marketing chops. So I went from video editor to writer to marketing manager, which is where I think I was at the end of that company. But
So
third
now
time,
during that
no, go
now
ahead.
during that time period, are you still doing the machinima? Like, have you?
No, I had pretty much retired by then. I think I had started that job and I was working on the last Machinima movie I ever made. And so it took me about a year or so after I got that job to finish that final video. It was the last Inventing Swear Words movie. I think it was Inventing Swear Words 5. And I tried to make it a big send off because I was planning on retiring. I wasn't from
So
Machinima.
that
I
was it.
wasn't.
So you were planning on being done. Like
Yeah.
you were planning on that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Was there a reason for that? Like, was it like because it wasn't working, or you were getting tired of doing it, or?
Um, No, it was because I was starting a family and I needed to make money. So it wasn't paying off at the time, the YouTube thing, and that it was extremely labor intensive. At the time, I was again, I just couldn't get out of the rut of making elaborate videos, and all of my videos had original. I hired a composer to make original scores, not just songs, but scores for my videos. I was doing all of this really high touch visual effects in After Effects, and doing all of the voice acting and all of the editing, and it was just laborious, and it took an enormous amount of time. And I'd publish it and I wouldn't get the views that I needed. And remember, I was publishing all of my content to YouTube in the early days of YouTube. This was before they had a partner program, so I never made
Yeah,
any money off of
that's what I was
any
going
of
to
my old
ask you. So
YouTube
up to
videos.
this point, this is about 2010, if I remember
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
So you really hadn't made any money on YouTube at all at that point. Like
None.
that wasn't so none at all, or just like not enough to like to was
None,
so was
none at
there?
all. Like all of my original videos, they had hit their peaks and had gone down the other side before YouTube even had a partner program in place.
Yeah,
When they had a partner program, I applied to it, I got accepted, but I think I was making like $50 a year, right? Because all
yeah,
my all
yeah.
my videos had already succeeded. They'd already done their thing. So there was absolutely no money in YouTube for me at that time, and I didn't think there was ever going to be money in YouTube for me. So I was trying to focus on what was actually paying my bills, which was joining the corporate world and working in marketing.
Yeah. So, but the creative drive to make the videos, like you kind of were over that at that point.
Yeah,
Like you
I
didn't have the intrinsic need to make these videos anymore.
no, I focused my creativity in other ways. I was always a writer, and I had been writing this book in college, and when I went to California, I tried to find a publisher for it, and I got a couple guys who really wanted to publish it as a science fiction novel. But then the financial crisis happened, and they lost interest. So I had this novel that was done,
Is this the
and
Clorin Hastings? Clorin
that's
Hastings.
that's
Yeah.
right, The Tale of Clorin Hastings. I had this novel that was done, and I never got it published. So really, one of the major creative things I did while I was working for Boutique is I finished the book. I went through it one more time. I added a couple thousand more words to it, and I self-published it. I was really into writing. I had a number of blogs. I had a blog where I reviewed beard care products, which was a lot of fun. And I was trying to make that profitable because my role at Boutique transitioned from video editing into search engine optimization. So I
Hmm.
was learning how to optimize our clients' hotel websites for search engines. And at the same time, as a hobby, I was creating my own blogs where I was trying to promote products. And I was using the search engine optimization knowledge that I had learned to do so. And it got to a point where one of the blogs that I had made about beard care products was racking in, a couple $1,000s a month.
Interested through
So
advertising.
uh, through through a combination of advertising and affiliate link clicks,
Gotcha.
affiliate marketing. So that's how
So
I.
what is it?
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was going to ask you, what part of the writing do you enjoy? Like, what's the thing about the writing that lights you up?
Just being able to tell my own story in my own way. Um, just having the creative freedom to go wherever I want to with it. I enjoy, of course, other people's stories as well, but those are a fixed path. I like deviating from the path. So being able to make your own story is just incredibly rewarding.
So this
Uh,
is probably the part of the machinima that you really enjoyed, like the idea that
yeah,
you could tell your own story um, through video and music.
yeah. It was a lot of fun. Um, but I didn't have nearly as much time at that point in my life to work on my videos or to work on blogs or work on books as I would have liked because I was, preoccupied by my career. And third time's the charm because it ended up that startup took off and we ended up selling it to Priceline about 3 years after the company was founded.
Oh wow.
And so once it was sold, all of the Priceline people came in, and everyone who started the company were let go. So I had to find a new role. And after you sell a startup to a company like Priceline, you're golden. Like you're
Oh,
you're
interesting.
you're good to go. So I got a lot of interest in my resume. It was always from hospitality management software companies, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
But I found a company in California that was needed a marketing guy, and they allowed me to work remote, and they hired me as the VP of marketing. So I got to work for a couple of years for them as the VP of marketing, which was probably one of the most rewarding marketing jobs I ever had, because as the head honcho of marketing, I got to oversee everything. I had input into every aspect of the product, of the website, of the marketing message, of the brand, of the copy. Like it, just being able to take the public facing aspect of the entire company and optimize it in such a way that that's also a way to be really creative.
Hmm.
So that was a lot of fun.
Which company was that?
Cloud beds.
Okay, as
It,
another hospitality company.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was very different. They had just recently acquired a company called My Allocator, which allowed hoteliers to list their inventory on a variety of online platforms like Orbitz and Priceline and all of that. So they had My Allocator, which allowed hoteliers to get their rooms out there, but then they also had Cloud Beds, which was a property management system. So they would be able to run the day to day operations of their hotels from the cloud instead of from archaic software that was invented in the late 80s or early 90s that
Hmm.
most big hotels were running on at the time. So yeah, that was great. I did that for several years. I got to work remote. The paycheck was nice. Finally, it was a decent paycheck. And then Fallout 4 came out. Now, I had played Fallout 3 when I was between jobs. After I lost my job at Wii Game, I played a lot of Fallout 3. And it was funny because when I was in California working at Wii Game, all of my coworkers were excited about Fallout 3. And I had never played any of the original Fallouts. I had this one coworker who was like, "Oh man, Fallout 2 was such a great game. I can't wait for Fallout 3," because they had played Oblivion and they loved all of the weird Oblivion memes that kept cropping up on their website on WeGame.com. People were having a great time making Oblivion memes. But then Fallout 3 comes out and they were like, they weren't as into it as they thought they were going to be. But I, on the other hand, was really into it. And I had never played a game like Fallout 3.
Yeah, I had the same experience too. Like it's kind of embarrassing having been in the game industry for so long, and I think Fallout 3 was my first exposure to that type of game. Like my first real exposure to it. I mean, I had played kind of like the Final Fantasy games and things like that early on, and like, but like the idea of a like narrative driven RPG, um,
Yeah.
and like I didn't, going into it, I didn't even really know how to play it. Like that was the story I tell about Fallout 3 was that I went in and tried to roll a character that was just all intelligence and no strength or anything, and like I struggled and struggled and struggled. Like I thought I would be able to sort of like talk people out of killing me, and realized that the game didn't work like that. And I remember coming back to work at Yazy and saying like I'm like I can't get anywhere in this game, and somebody tell me like, yeah, you need like strength and dexterity. You can't intelligence and charisma. That was I could put everything in intelligence. But yeah, it was an interesting experience for me too, because it was a unique, and everybody had seemed to play the other Fallouts. I was completely unaware of them, and spent a lot of time in that game.
Yeah, it was the thing. It was the game that made me fall in love with the Fallout universe, and what really drew me to it was the world building. It was their ability to tell a story about the universe without using words. And that was really novel to me at the time because, I'd spent so much of my creative energy writing and using words, which I still enjoy and I thought was great. But then I'm here in Fallout 3 and I'm walking into a ruined basement of an elementary school and finding tons of tiny skeletons, and a story is being told without words. And there were just moments like that, and the oppressive atmosphere of the game, and the getting lost in the tunnel systems beneath the nation's capital, and you wind up on the ass end of the wasteland, and so much has happened. There was something about that game that was just magic, and I thoroughly loved it. But then, I started working on my marketing career and I stopped playing games. I probably spent, almost a decade without playing hardly any games at all, aside from maybe card games or something like that. But then Fallout 4 comes out. And when it comes out, I ignore it at first because I'm too busy with my job. But then one night on a whim, I finally had time to myself. And I'm like, well, let me install this game and try it out. And I fell in love with Fallout all over again. And it became just something I had to keep doing, which I know sounds weird. It almost sounds like an obsession, and maybe it was, but I played a lot of Fallout, and I was working on my settlements, and I enjoyed the story of Fallout 4. And I had a second YouTube channel because I was still doing my weekly show, and I had been doing my weekly show every single week for years, ever since my old World of Warcraft days. So, this was, I had been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years now, and I had this weekly show, and I was publishing.
So what was the content that you had on the weekly show?
It was just talking. And I do it every week. It's Scotch and Smoke Rings, 7:00 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday nights. I sit in front of a camera, I drink scotch, I smoke cigars, and I just chat with the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually evolved to playing a scary game. So we'll chat for the first hour, and then for the next couple of hours, we'll play a horror game or something together, which is really fun. But I had been doing that show, and I needed a place to store my old episodes. And so I created a second channel for Scotch and Smoke Rings episodes. Well, while I was playing Fallout 4, I remember I finally discovered how synths were made. And it was this huge storyline plot point in the game. And I was so excited that I finally got to see synths being made. I'm like, I've got to capture this. So I was teaching myself how to shoot footage all over again. But by this time, all of the software that was used for recording footage had evolved, and everything that was on my old computer didn't work on my new computer. So I had to relearn the software that was used, and I had to download a new software. And so my original footage is really choppy, but I managed to get inside the Institute lab and I'm seeing these synths being made and record the footage, and I publish it with no words or nothing onto my YouTube channel. And it didn't get any views, but it was my very first Fallout 4 video. And by making it, I felt like I was uncovering something. And that's the thing about the Fallout games, that it gives you this illusion that you're the first to discover something, even though everyone else in the world is playing the same game you are and has.
Yeah, it's kind of magical how that works. Yeah,
I felt like I needed to document it. It was kind of like the historian in me was mixing with the storyteller in me, and I had to document what was going on in this game. And so I started making little Fallout videos about some of the stories, and I was also creating settlements at the time, which are little towns you can create with their settlement builder. And I wanted to show off the towns that I was making. And I wasn't publishing a ton at the time. I was publishing a few videos a week, but then they started to get pretty good views, and then they started to get more views than my episodes of Scotch and Smoke Rings. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should publish even more. And so I started publishing, almost one a day. And then they started to make more views than my old World of Warcraft videos. And then YouTube asks if I want to be a partner for this second channel. I'm like, all right. So I get to be a partner for the second channel, and then I start making some decent money. And now this YouTube channel is making more money than the little beard blog that I had written. And I put so much time and energy into that beard blog, trying to get all the SEO perfect, and then making these fun little Fallout videos started making more money than that. I'm like, all right, well, I'll keep focusing on that. And then, Fallout 4 releases a number of expansions, the Far Harbor DLC, and I wanted to cover that. So I started producing content about that. And then Nuka World comes out, and so I wanted to produce content about that. And after a while, maybe after about 4 or 5 months, my Fallout channel was now making more money than my company job.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it, because that's what I was trying to get to. This entire time I had hoped after college that I'd be able to get to the point where my video editing and my storytelling would get me to the point where I could actually make more money than my salary job. And I finally got there, and it was an accident.
Yeah, isn't it funny how that works? That was sort of my experience too with a game company. Like that all the things I tried really hard to do, never really panned out. And the thing that I did for, just as a joke,
as a hobby,
ended up as a hobby and a joke, ended
night.
up being the thing that really took off. I mean, I had the same experience. Like when I started the game company, like it was literally like a joke, like what was going on was,
I remember you guys would come into the office and talk about all your little strategies.
Yeah, it was a really funny time, because we were running the startup, and we were trying so hard. And I think at the time I was doing music, like I was writing music, and I was thinking like, no one's ever going to hear this music, so like I better make some crappy games to stick it in, because at least people will hear my music. And the Xbox thing was kind of just starting, and it was hilarious to us that we could just throw a game on the Xbox as a joke, and it would make some money. And it's just funny because it's the same sort of story as that's the trajectory where stuff really takes off, that's the, because the joke I had is that like we had gone through so much like legal stuff with Microsoft in that startup, because Microsoft owned, I don't know if like how much of the history that you know or remember about that, but Microsoft owned a significant piece of that company. And we had gone through so much like legal shenanigans to like starting a company with Microsoft is a difficult thing to do. And, there's a lot of lawyers involved, and, more paperwork than you would want in a small company. So when I started mine, I just did it in the least mature way possible. And like, I've never had contracts with anybody. I never, I've never engaged a lawyer, never, I don't think I even incorporated until I was, 3 or 4 years in.
Yeah.
like it was just a joke. But it's so that's interesting. That's you hear this story a lot from people where the thing that they take the least serious is the thing that ends up working the best for them. So you start making Fallout videos, and that starts taking off, and the Fallout videos are now out. So at what point do you leave your day job? Like that's the
It was one of the most nerve-wracking decisions that I had to make, because I was at the point now where the the new YouTube channel was making more money, but in order to continue to produce content at the rate that I needed to, in order to continue to make money, I had to devote more of my time to it. And I felt like it wouldn't be fair to the company that I was working for if I didn't give them my 100% as well. So I had to choose between the two, and I kind of bit the bullet and said my fond farewells to Cloudbeds. And they were amazing people. They're really understanding, and I had a great work experience with them, but I wanted to kind of try this. And it ended up working, because shortly thereafter, I went from replacing my salary to doubling it, to
yeah.
tripling it, to going far beyond what I thought I would ever make at doing a job like this. And all I had to do was continue to be creative and to come up with new stories to tell and new ways to tell stories and find something interesting about the universe. And I've had no shortage of opportunities to do that. So it's been fun.
That's an amazing story. It's amazing how things like that work out. How it's like really quickly. And that's the question I was going to ask you. Is that um, when you had the extra time to devote to the YouTube videos, like was there a major impact there? And it sounds like there was.
It was what having extra time allowed me to be creative in different ways. On one hand, I'm not telling my own stories, because these are not my stories. They're Bethesda stories, even though I know you can make your own character and you could tell your own character stories. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell Bethesda stories in a more approachable way, in a way that was good for film. Because normally, when you go into a Bethesda game and you're playing Fallout and you're exploring a dungeon, you have to be focused. You have to find all of the holotapes, all of the notes, all of the terminals, and then get all of the story and then piece it together before you understand the plot of what happened in that particular dungeon. And I'd say maybe 7 out of 10 gamers don't do that. They go in there for the loot. They want to get the cool gun. They want to kill the boss. They want to get the experience and move on to the next thing. So a lot of people miss the story, the little side story. And so I felt there was an opportunity for me to retell those stories in a way that was easily consumable. And it gave me an opportunity to be creative in my own ways. I think one of the most fulfilling things I've done with my new channel is telling the stories of Fallout New Vegas, because it gave me an opportunity to dust off my music chops. In particular, when I did the Lonesome Road DLC, there were so many great moments of cinematic. There were so many great cinematic moments that were clearly envisioned by the developers when they were making that game, but due to the limitations of hardware and the format of the game itself, weren't realized. And so what I got to do is, like, you get to the end of the Lonesome Road DLC, you finally meet this boss that's been stalking you through 5 other DLCs, and it's this huge moment. But in the game, you're just standing there in your first-person mode, and you're just walking forward, and you have a conversation. What I got to do with console commands is I got to pop the camera away from the characters and then take these cinematic shots of each of the characters talking at each other. You've got nukes coming up on either side. You've got robots that you can interact with to set up. Like, I tried to turn it into a more of a visual storytelling format. And it was the same with the Mothership Zeta DLC for Fallout 3, because again, they're telling this really interesting story, but you're just stuck in this little first-person window mode, and you're just looking around. Hopefully you'll get all the dialogue. But with console commands, I'm able to, pop the camera out and then take shots of all of these characters. And the kid runs into the bridge of the starship, and then the aliens pop up out of the elevator shaft, and I can catch all of these moments and put it together in a cinematic way so that people are much more entertained watching it instead of playing it. So that is what's really fulfilling for me, being able to take the story from the game and turn it into a cinematic story and then add things that I feel that are missing. Like if there's music that is missing, I get it composed and I put it in there. If there's singing that's missing, I sing it and I put it in there. If there's narration that's missing, I speak it and put it in there. So that's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. A lot of people try to do what you do, but there's obviously some sort of like magic that you have to it. And if you look at your background, you have a background in video production and creative production and music in general. And do you think that that's the thing, like the secret sauce, right? Is it like your creative reinterpretation of these video games that make your content sort of stand out above other stuff?
I think I've been blessed with a decent sounding voice and clear enunciation. So a lot of YouTube channels, I'll watch them in the gaming industry, and they'll have really great, video editing and excellent information. But then the person who makes the video comes on and starts speaking, and it's like, oh,
interesting.
It's a little grating. So one of the top comments I'll get is that they enjoy listening to my voice, which is flattering. When I grew up, I never thought that I had a good voice, but now I hear it all the time. And maybe it's just practice. Maybe it's from years of singing or from constantly doing my weekly show or from talking as much as I do. But people like the way I talk. Of course, I get a lot of people who say they don't like the way I talk too. So it's one of those things where they love it or they hate it. But I think it's a combination of the way I talk and being able to tell a story in the way that I do. I mean, I wrote a book. I was heavily invested in like Tolkien, and then of course I got a history degree, so I know how ancient tales are told and all of that. All of this, the little itty bitty things of my life have kind of come together in what I do now. That kind of gives me a unique voice, and that I think is the thing people like the most on YouTube, is just finding something that they haven't seen before. And if it's also good, then they're going to subscribe and they're going to keep watching.
That's neat. So you're doing the Fallout thing, and Starfield just came out, and you got a lot of Starfield content. I see that. Has kind of the landscape of what you're doing, has that changed very much over like the last, I would say, I don't know, 5 or 6 years? Like, is it like, because right now there's like, like short format video is a big thing. And there's a lot of, we're going through a phase again where there's now more platforms. There was this era where like, YouTube was kind of the thing. And now there's, other places for that. There's, there's, TikTok kind of launched the short format thing, and everybody kind of followed that, so now you're seeing short format video on Facebook and Instagram and, of course, TikTok. And I'm kind of curious, from your point of view, has that change in landscape affected the way that you generate content?
It hasn't, but it should, because, and it's the same thing that happened back in the old World of Warcraft days. For me, I think I adapt slowly to technological change. The past 5 years have been, things have evolved quite a lot. And you're right, there's short form content has become this major thing. The problem with short form content is that it's not conducive to storytelling, the kind of storytelling that I do. Like I'll pump out 20, 30, 40 minute long videos doing a deep dive into a dungeon, and people will love it on YouTube, but it doesn't really make a good short.
Yeah.
But
do you feel like...
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you feel like people have changed themselves, like if like the consumer has changed as a result of the short format video. Like people's focus have changed.
So shorter videos shorter videos are great for getting lots of views. So there are two metrics on YouTube that are important: the views that you get and the watch time. That is, what percentage of the video people actually sit through, right? A shorter video is going to take less emotional and intellectual investment. And so videos between, less than 5 minutes long, they get a lot of views. They're 10 minutes long, they get a lot of views, especially if they're short, informational, and to the point. But you've got less room in the video for advertisements. The longer videos, like the kind I do, they get fewer views, but people watch for longer. And that's also a really important metric for your videos, because the more people watch, the more ads they're going to watch, and the more revenue you're going to make. So with shorts, the problem with shorts is that they're so short, like 60 seconds short, that there's barely enough time for an ad. There are some ads on YouTube that are themselves 60 seconds long. There are some ads on YouTube that are 5 minutes long, and they're unskippable, right? But we're talking about shorts where each video itself has to capture your attention immediately, and the entire thing is only 60 seconds. So how do you make money off of that? And the answer is that you have to really go viral, and you've got to make every video a viral hit, and you publish 3 or 4 viral hits a day for it to be profitable. Like, I'm publishing a YouTube short almost every single day, and they rack up lots of views, which is great. But because they're so short, they don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I've been focusing with my shorts on the best snippets of my live streams. And it's still worth my time because it's free advertising. YouTube will promote my shorts. And even though the shorts themselves don't make very much money, they get people to laugh. And then those people will go back to my channel, and they might show up to my next live stream. So I've seen my live streaming, even though I'm not streaming on Twitch, my live streaming on YouTube has steadily increased viewership and profitability over time, and it's gone up even more ever since I started publishing shorts. So I'm trying to adapt to this new landscape, and I just hope that I adapt the right way.
It's kind of always the trick, isn't it? Like, it's difficult to keep up with the world,
Yeah.
like, in general. But it's great that like YouTube isn't going away. Like, the format for your content's very, very popular, and it isn't like I don't foresee any dramatic changes there.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is doing a really good job trying to position themselves as an alternative to Netflix, an alternative to these really expensive subscription services out there. I mean, they do have YouTube Red. They've got a subscription version of YouTube Red, but an unlimited number of possibilities. Like, anything you could ever want is on YouTube, and that's never going to go away. So yeah, I hopefully we'll be able to keep doing this for the foreseeable future. We'll see.
It's amazing. So what's next for you? Where do you see we're doing? I see a lot of Starfield content. I think that, like, how long? And it's interesting to me because it's like, when do you decide to move from one type of content to another? Like, is it?
Well, this is kind of where my head is at right now. The lore videos, the long form lore videos, have been the bread and butter of my new YouTube channel for a long time now, and they've been very profitable. And I enjoy making them, but they take a lot of time. It used to be that I could crank out one a day when I was covering smaller stories in Fallout, for example, and each video would be less than 10 minutes long. My content has evolved to where each video is now 40 minutes to an hour long, and I cover more of the topics inside the video, and that's slowed down my production of videos, so that I'm doing like one a week, one lore video a week if I'm lucky. And there are a lot of drawbacks to doing that because YouTube rewards people who publish more content, and not necessarily those who publish less content. So that said, there are people who publish once a month, and their videos get millions and millions of views. So I haven't quite cracked the YouTube algorithm. Hopefully I'll get there someday. But I'm starting to notice that my live streaming is becoming as profitable, it's not quite as profitable as my lore videos, but it's climbing, and it's getting to the point where if I keep streaming in a steady schedule, it might make more money than my lore videos. which is putting me in an interesting position because on one hand, I really enjoy making my longer narrated videos. They're incredibly creative. It's a creative outlet for me, and they're rewarding. On the other hand, I'm a single father of two kids, and they take an enormous amount of time.
Yeah.
With the live streams, I sit down in front of the camera, I play a game, and I chat for 4 hours, and then I'm done for the day, right? Unless I have a lore video. So the way my
So
schedule
I'm
works
curious
now,
about that. Like, do you? So when you say that the live videos, monetize well, is I kind of assumed you meant that you take the live video and then you cut it up and put it in places, and that's the place where it monetizes. But you're saying that the actual live stream itself is where.
yeah, and that's what's surprised me. I didn't think that the actual live streams themselves would
That's really interesting.
end up paying off. And I didn't learn this until I streamed Fallout 76 when it came out in 2019. Like some of my live streams, my 4 hour live streams of that game are pushing 600, 700, 800,000 views. And I personally don't watch other people play video games. I guess maybe because I spend a great deal of my time
Yeah.
playing video games. But to see that there are so many people out there that are interested in my journey through this game, and Starfield has been amazing. I've gotten more more return viewers who have been enjoying my streaming of Starfield than almost with any other game. I mean, it's hard to. When Fallout 76 came out, I had a ton of viewers. That was like the peak. But since then, I've streamed dozens and dozens of games, and nothing has come close until I got to Starfield. And every time I go live, go ahead.
So during the live streams, is it ads running that generate the revenue, or is there a different model that YouTube has for that?
It's a combination of revenue sources. I get super chats. People can pay money to get their chat highlighted, so I see it more easily, and then I'll read it and respond to it. There are super tips where they just pay money to give me a tip to tell me that they like the content. Super stickers where they can just put a little sticker in the chat and they pay money to do that. And then, of course, there are in-stream ads, but the in-stream ads are not what's profitable. It's after the video has published, an entirely different ad system gets put into the video on demand. So people who go back to rewatch the live stream, or people who missed the live stream and just want to watch the episode again, will go through a bunch of ads that play during the 4, 5, 6 hour broadcast. And it's those that are really making it profitable.
Interesting. So it is the return, like it's the after the live stream is where.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I live stream on YouTube and not Twitch, because Twitch doesn't have that built-in audience of people who are looking for static videos that are published and live that they can just go back to and bookmark and watch casually and then pause and then come back later. That's what YouTube excels at. That's where they made a name for themselves. And being able to do a live stream that publishes directly to that platform and gets into YouTube's algorithm is really beneficial. Now, that said, I mean, I still sometimes battle with my decision to live stream on YouTube as opposed to Twitch, because Twitch has this huge gaming community of people who are there just specifically primarily to watch games, and they've got their own streaming culture over on Twitch and their own expectations that don't necessarily align with mine. I find the YouTube chat culture way more chill. Maybe that's just my community. My community is awesome. I get the same names and the same people who come to every single broadcast. We all have the same jokes. So maybe I'm just used to interfacing with my community. But I'll go and I'll watch a Twitch stream, and the chat is just like flashing lights and emojis and stars and just bold and all caps and
way different energy. Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on there? I can't even read the chat. So I like YouTube, but maybe I would have made more money if I did Twitch. But I like YouTube, so I'm doing YouTube.
It's amazing. So I don't want to take too much of your time here. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and do this with me. Is there anything else that, like going forward, that you're just really excited about, or you want to, that you are, like, some secret thing that you're cooking up or planning on working up right now?
Uh, Nothing that I haven't already talked about. I'm focusing primarily on Starfield right now because Starfield is a new game, but it won't be a new game forever. I was in the middle of a Fallout 4 lore series when Starfield released, so I do intend to go back to that lore series and complete it. But I'm really focusing on my Starfield live streams and my Starfield lore videos. I'm going to continue to crank out shorts as often as I can. That's really my strategy there. I'm publishing my weekly show as a podcast because I don't really know, but I don't know if it really fits as a podcast. YouTube is really trying to push their podcast system. They've got this new tab on their channels just for podcasts, so they're trying to get into the podcast space. And one of the top Google searches for my name, Oxhorn, is "Does Oxhorn have a podcast?" And I
Oh,
don't.
interesting.
So
Well, maybe this will be the beginning of something for you here.
maybe it's one of those things where everybody comes in saying, Oxhorn, first of all, do you do audiobooks and do you do podcasts? And I don't do either. So maybe I should start. We'll see.
Well, I think given your history, you should probably follow what sort of lights you up the best, because I think it
Yeah.
sounds like that's where you've had the most success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and we'll have to get together soon. I don't see you enough.
Yeah.
Like, we should
Definitely.
really definitely spend more time together. Yeah. Thank you.
This has been fun. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you.